Picture this, right? It is Monday morning. You are standing in the executive boardroom of a major corporation, and there is a distinct sound of champagne corks popping.
Oh, I can see it. Everyone's patting themselves on the back.
Exactly. The leadership team is celebrating because over the weekend, they just finalized this massive multi-million-dollar software cutover.
Right.
The legacy systems are officially retired, data migration is done, system integration is flawless, and the vendor has officially signed off.
So on paper, it is a total undeniable triumph.
Totally. But then you take the elevator down to the operational floor.
Yeah, and the environment down there tells a completely different story.
It's just jarring. Downstairs, absolute chaos is unfolding. I mean, customer calls are backing up. Employees are staring blankly at these completely foreign monitors.
Panicked emails flying absolutely everywhere.
Right. The executives upstairs, they think they've just crossed the finish line. But the people actually doing the work, they feel like they've been dropped into a foreign country without a map.
Yeah, we are looking at the classic corporate disconnect here. The illusion of a successful technology launch is basically crashing headfirst into the very messy reality of human behavior.
Which brings us perfectly to our mission for today's deep dive. We got our hands on a brilliant executive briefing article from the Bletchley Transformation Academy, or the BTA.
Yes, specifically we're diving into Article 2 on the BTI Enterprise architecture.
Right, and we are going to explore exactly why these massive technical migrations fail so spectacularly when there is no behavioral alignment.
And more importantly, we want to arm you with the framework to prevent your next big project from crashing into that exact same wall of human resistance.
Because it is a formidable wall.
It really is. The source material actually refers to this collision as the human system friction gap.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have the glossy illusion of success upstairs and the gritty reality of this human system friction gap downstairs. What is the actual fundamental mechanism creating that gap?
Well, it really comes down to a core structural difference in how systems operate versus how human beings operate.
Right.
So software platforms, particularly these modern cloud enterprise systems, they are entirely deterministic. They rely on logical, unyielding workflows.
Like A leads to B, which forces you to input C.
Exactly. The code does not care if you are tired or, if it is a busy Tuesday or if you have a headache. But the human workforce, they do not operate on deterministic logic.
No, definitely not.
Right. Human adoption relies heavily on habit, on a sense of psychological safety, and on incredibly clear role-based execution.
So we're essentially taking two completely different operational models and just smashing them together.
Pretty much, yeah.
Let's look at the anatomy of this collision then. It makes me think of an analogy.
Oh, lay it on me.
Okay, it's like buying a state-of-the-art high-performance sports car for someone who has only ever driven an automatic sedan.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Right. You hand them the keys to this amazing manual transmission sports car, but you don't actually teach them how to drive a stick shift.
And then you are completely shocked when they stall it right in the middle of a busy intersection.
Exactly. You just left them there.
And that stalling, that's exactly what happens to operational performance.
Right.
When you hand that complex sports car to someone who doesn't know the mechanics, the immediate aftermath is a precipitous drop in performance.
It just nosedives.
It does. Because without structured enablement to help users cross that gap, you get immediate workforce stagnation. People literally do not know what pedal to push next, so they just stall out entirely.
They're terrified of wrecking the car, basically.
Yeah, and out of that terror, or, just desperation to get their job done, you see the proliferation of workarounds.
Right.
People will do anything they can to bypass the rigidity of the new system just to hit their daily targets. And ultimately, the value of the platform itself is completely eroded.
Because they aren't using the tool the way it was designed to be used. But the executives in the boardroom are looking out the window saying, what's the problem? The engine works perfectly.
Right, they're saying, we checked the brakes, the car is flawless.
Yeah.
But they're making a very specific, very dangerous mistake here. They are mistaking platform readiness for operational adoption.
Oh, that is a huge distinction.
It is. And the BTA source material explicitly warns against this blind spot. Technical completion without behavioral alignment is not just some missed opportunity, it is a massive financial liability.
Right. So if we understand the anatomy of this friction gap, the rigid manual transmission versus the habit of the automatic driver, we have to look at the why.
Exactly.
Are people just naturally stubborn? Let's move into the psychology of the end user. Because the source breaks this down into three core drivers of user resistance.
And it is vital to understand here that this resistance is rarely an act of intentional defiance.
Right, they aren't trying to be difficult.
No, people aren't waking up deciding to sabotage the new software. It is a predictable reaction to three underlying operational misalignments.
Okay, let's go through them.
So the first driver is cognitive overload.
Oh man, if you've looked at modern cloud ERP or CRM platforms lately, they look like the control panel of a spaceship.
They really do.
There are 50 fields, 10 different drop-downs, nested menus everywhere you click.
Yeah, they introduce incredibly rich feature sets and these very high-density interfaces. Now, imagine expecting your operational staff to master navigating these complex new screens while simultaneously maintaining their normal daily output volume.
Because the demand from the customer doesn't just stop because the software changed.
Exactly. The phones are still ringing, the queue is still backing up.
Yeah.
The staff is trying to process the normal, everyday stress of their job, plus the intense mental load of decoding this totally foreign interface.
And the human brain can only hold so many variables in working memory at once.
Right, which creates severe cognitive fatigue. And cognitive fatigue leads directly to procedural errors. The brain simply cannot process that much new, dense information while under active operational pressure.
Wow. Okay. So if their brains are completely full from this cognitive overload, how do they react to the actual rules of the system?
Well, that brings up the second driver, which is the loss of local autonomy.
Right, because in the legacy systems, people had all these informal, sort of department-specific workarounds.
Yeah, they figured out little shortcuts over the years to make their lives easier.
But modern enterprise software enforces very rigid standard operating procedures, or SOPs.
It does. It takes away all of that localized flexibility. You can't just skip a field anymore because you know the customer's billing address by heart.
Okay, let me push back on this, though.
Sure.
Wait, isn't standardizing workflows the whole point of enterprise software?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why wouldn't employees want clear rules? Doesn't that just make things more efficient and less chaotic for the company as a whole?
What's fascinating here is how that standardization is actually perceived by the workforce on the ground.
Okay.
Yes, at a macro level, the business definitely wants standard roles for data hygiene and reporting, but without clear contextual translation, right?
Meaning what?
Yeah,
Exactly.
meaning without management actually taking the time to explain why these rules matter to the individual specific job staff, do not see it as helpful governance.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they perceive these new rigid workflows as pure bureaucratic friction.
Right. You stripped away their local autonomy, their ability to solve problems quickly in their own way.
Exactly, and you replaced it with this multi-step process that feels like it's just slowing them down.
It feels like red tape for the sake of red tape,
Precisely. They don't see the macro benefit, they only see the micro inconvenience.
which perfectly introduces the third driver from the source, microprocess disconnects.
Right.
This one is fascinating because it exposes a major flaw in how software is actually deployed.
It really does. When integrators are configuring these massive platforms, they are mapping out workflows based on the happy path.
The ideal scenario where everything goes perfectly.
Yes, they are working from high-level process maps, the big picture stuff. But the glaring problem is that the granular day-to-day microtasks, the weird little exceptions that happen at 3 p.m. on a Thursday, those are frequently omitted entirely from the vendor training scripts.
Right. For instance, say a customer submits an invoice with 2 different currency types, or a shipping address that spans 2 different zip codes.
Yeah, the high-level map never accounted for that, so the standard operating procedure doesn't cover it.
So when an end user faces one of those non-standard operational exceptions, they are completely stranded.
The system throws a hard error and won't let them move forward. Their training never covered what to do, so again, they freeze or they invent a dangerous workaround.
So we have cognitive overload, loss of local autonomy, and microprocess disconnects.
Right.
And because these 3 psychological drivers are so predictable, the fallout must be measurable.
Absolutely measurable.
If you are a PMO lead or a transformation director listening to this, what are the actual red flags on the ground? The source outlines 3 early warning indicators that signal an accelerating friction gap.
You really need to monitor these pre-cutover and immediately post-go live. Indicator number 1 is shadow IT proliferation.
Shadow IT, meaning unauthorized tools.
Exactly. When departmental teams find the new system too rigid or complex, they quietly create their own workarounds. They build elaborate Excel spreadsheets, hidden macros, or Google trackers just to bypass the new input fields entirely.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This is exactly like the concept of desire paths in urban planning.
Oh, right, like walking on the grass.
Yes, you see this on college campuses all the time. An architect designs this beautiful paved sidewalk with perfect right angles, but pedestrians just walk straight across the grass to get to the library faster.
Because it's the path of least resistance.
Right. And eventually they wear a dirt path right into the lawn.
The pedestrians are optimizing for their own efficiency, just completely ignoring the architect's intended design.
So shadow IT and those hidden Excel sheets are the digital equivalents of employees walking on the grass.
That is a great way to look at it.
The paved sidewalk, the new multi-million-dollar software is poorly designed for their actual messy day-to-day journey, so they literally carve their own dirt paths to hit their targets.
And ignoring the paved sidewalk brings us to the second indicator, Helpdesk ticket inflation.
Wait, I need to stop you there, because I've read the metric in the source for this, and it is staggering.
Oh, 60%.
Yes, over 60% of post-launch IT support tickets are just how-to navigation queries.
More than half, yeah. They are not actual software bugs. The servers haven't crashed. It is literally just hundreds of employees raising formal IT tickets asking, how do I attach a purchase order? Or where did the submit button go?
Wow. You've essentially turned your highly paid IT engineers into software tour guides.
Exactly. And this raises an important question for any leadership team listening. Are you and your IT team looking at the right metrics?
Right.
Because if your help desk is suddenly drowning in tickets, your first assumption might be that the software is broken. You might think the code is flawed.
But it's not.
No. That 60% metric proves the software is functioning perfectly. It is the behavioral alignment that is entirely broken. You are treating a fundamental adoption crisis as if it were a technical glitch.
Which means the underlying frustration never gets solved.
Right.
And when people get frustrated enough, we hit the third warning indicator: data quality degradation.
And this is perhaps the most damaging symptom long-term. Users will start leaving key operational fields completely blank.
Or they use placeholder text, right? Like typing TBD into a mandatory box just to force the system to accept it.
Yep. Or they will enter completely inaccurate, fabricated data for the sole purpose of expediting task closure.
Because the system physically blocks them from moving to the next screen until that field is filled, and they have a manager breathing down their neck about call volume. They just want to clear the screen.
They are desperate to make the cognitive overload stop, but by entering garbage data to clear their queue, they are actively poisoning the very system the company just bought to generate clean data.
Wow. Okay, so we've diagnosed the illness, we understand the three drivers, and we know how to spot the symptoms: shadow IT, help desk inflation, and poison data.
Now we have to move to the cure.
Right, because right now, this massive investment is fast becoming a very sophisticated paperweight.
And the BTA is unambiguous here. Generic change management will not save you.
No. You cannot just throw a pizza party, host a generic company town hall, and expect thousands of people to magically master a cloud ERP.
Definitely not. But organizations love to do that. They assign those generic 4-hour video modules on the company learning portal, and employees just click next while looking at their phones.
Yeah, a generic video module will not resolve a microprocess disconnect at 3 in the afternoon.
Exactly. Bridging this gap requires a targeted, structural intervention, and the BTI framework offers a 4-step solution for this.
Okay, what's the first step?
The first pillar is role-based contextual training.
Meaning we completely ditch the generic vendor feature walkthroughs.
Yes, you have to curate the curriculum aggressively. Frontline staff should absolutely not be trained on everything the software can do.
Right, that just adds to the overload.
Exactly. They must be trained exclusively on the exact workflows required for their specific daily operational scope. Nothing more. Remove all the extraneous noise, hide the menus they don't need, and reduce the cognitive overload before they even log in.
Show them only their specific paved sidewalk.
Exactly.
But, even the best training doesn't survive contact with reality. What happens when they run into one of those weird exceptions we talked about earlier?
Right, and that requires the second pillar, embedded practitioner support. During the launch windows, you do not just tell people to call the help desk. You deploy trained internal practitioners directly onto the operational floors.
Oh, so these aren't IT guys coming down from the server room.
No, not at all. These are trusted peers, super users from within the actual department. They are physically in the room, walking the aisles, to triage real-time user friction right as it happens.
Oh, the psychology of that is totally
That they
different.
really is.
Yeah, because if I'm confused, raising a formal IT ticket feels intimidating, and it might take 2 days to get an answer.
Right.
But just leaning over and asking my desk mate, who is a trained practitioner, that diffuses the frustration instantly.
And you stop the 60% of navigation tickets before they ever get filed.
It's brilliant.
It provides immediate contextual translation of the problem. But, even with support on the floor, if leadership doesn't protect the time required to learn, it all falls apart.
Which brings us to the third pillar.
Yes. And this one is often the most controversial: behavioral KPI integration. You have to align individual performance metrics with system usage.
Okay, I have to press you on this one.
I figured you would.
Well, yeah, we just established that these employees are suffering from severe cognitive fatigue. They're stressed, they're trying to keep up with customer demand, and now you want to tie their bonus or their performance review to how well they use a confusing new software.
It sounds harsh.
Yeah, isn't tying someone's performance metrics to software usage a little draconian? Doesn't that just add to their stress?
Right.
Won't that cause a mass exodus?
If it is implemented purely as a punishment, yes, absolutely.
Right.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to look at the reality of organizational incentives.
Okay.
If learning the new system is treated as an optional secondary task, like nice to have, it will never happen. The daily pressure of hitting their old primary volume targets will always take precedence.
Because humans will always take the path of least resistance to hit their numbers.
Exactly. So you have to adjust the numbers. Behavioral KPI integration means you might lower a rep's call volume targets for the first month, provided they maintain 100% adherence to the new software workflows.
Oh, I see. You are structurally rewarding the time it takes to learn?
Yes. It must be recognized and measured as a core operational responsibility. Protecting the capital investment of that software requires active governance of human behavior right alongside the technical architecture.
Because if you don't adjust the metrics to reward adoption, they will just revert to shadow IT to hit their old metrics. It is prioritization, not punishment.
Exactly.
So how do we keep this newly aligned system from decaying over time? What is the fourth and final pillar?
Step 4 is continuous microfeedback loops.
Okay.
You need to establish weekly, highly granular operational feedback channels between the frontline associates, the people actually clicking the buttons, and those departmental practitioners we deployed in Step 2.
So they're constantly communicating about what is actually happening on the ground.
Right. The goal is to iteratively refine the system configuration. When the system throws that weird exception at 3 p.m. on a Thursday, the associate doesn't just bypass it and use Excel.
They flag it to the practitioner.
Yes. The practitioner then works with IT to permanently adjust the workflow or update the SOP to account for that exception moving forward. It is a continuous loop of systemic improvement.
You don't just launch the software and walk away.
Never.
You are actively tuning the train tracks based on the reality of the operational floor.
Yeah.
You are structurally eliminating the friction gap.
Exactly. Without those 4 pillars, contextual training, embedded support, behavioral KPIs, and feedback loops, you are really just waiting for the system's value to degrade.
Wow, this has been incredibly revealing.
Yeah.
Let's summarize the executive key takeaway from the BTA article.
Sure.
The absolute core truth here is that enterprise software transformation ultimately succeeds or fails at the point of user execution. It does not matter how flawless the code is, how fast the servers are, or how much champagne you pock in the boardroom. If the human being on the floor rejects it, the migration has failed.
That's the harsh reality.
To get sustainable ROI from these massive technical investments, you have to eliminate operational stagnation through structured, human-centric enablement.
Absolutely.
So what does this all mean? I want you, the listener, to reflect on your own workplace for a second. Think about the last time a major new tool or process dropped in your lap.
It's probably happened recently.
Yeah. And was your leadership team merely managing the technical readiness? Were they just checking boxes on vendor sign-offs? Or were they actually managing the humans who had to use it?
It's usually the former.
Right. Because as we've learned today, the software might be deterministic, but the success of the project is entirely human.
And that reality leads to a rather profound question about the future of our digital tools. We are constantly told that modern software is becoming more intuitive, more intelligent, and, more user-friendly by the day. But if the friction we've discussed today is so deeply ingrained in the transition process, at what point does the human-system friction gap stop being an internal corporate training issue and start being a fundamental design failure of the enterprise software industry itself?
Oh, that is a great question. If the train keeps derailing every time a human being tries to operate it, maybe it is time to ask why the manufacturer is still refusing to build in his steering wheel.
Exactly.
Next time you hear the champagne popping upstairs on a Monday morning, take a walk downstairs. See where the real work is happening. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time. Picture this, right? It is Monday morning. You are standing in the executive boardroom of a major corporation, and there is a distinct sound of champagne corks popping.
Oh, I can see it. Everyone's patting themselves on the back.
Exactly. The leadership team is celebrating because over the weekend, they just finalized this massive multi-million-dollar software cutover.
Right.
The legacy systems are officially retired, data migration is done, system integration is flawless, and the vendor has officially signed off.
So on paper, it is a total undeniable triumph.
Totally. But then you take the elevator down to the operational floor.
Yeah, and the environment down there tells a completely different story.
It's just jarring. Downstairs, absolute chaos is unfolding. I mean, customer calls are backing up. Employees are staring blankly at these completely foreign monitors.
Panicked emails flying absolutely everywhere.
Right. The executives upstairs, they think they've just crossed the finish line. But the people actually doing the work, they feel like they've been dropped into a foreign country without a map.
Yeah, we are looking at the classic corporate disconnect here. The illusion of a successful technology launch is basically crashing headfirst into the very messy reality of human behavior.
Which brings us perfectly to our mission for today's deep dive. We got our hands on a brilliant executive briefing article from the Bletchley Transformation Academy, or the BTA.
Yes, specifically we're diving into Article 2 on the BTI Enterprise Architecture.
Right, and we are going to explore exactly why these massive technical migrations fail so spectacularly when there is no behavioral alignment.
And more importantly, we want to arm you with the framework to prevent your next big project from crashing into that exact same wall of human resistance.
Because it is a formidable wall.
It really is. The source material actually refers to this collision as the human system friction gap.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have the glossy illusion of success upstairs and the gritty reality of this human system friction gap downstairs. What is the actual fundamental mechanism creating that gap?
Well, it really comes down to a core structural difference in how systems operate versus how human beings operate.
Right.
So software platforms, particularly these modern cloud enterprise systems, they are entirely deterministic. They rely on logical, unyielding workflows.
Like A leads to B, which forces you to input C.
Exactly. The code does not care if you are tired or, if it is a busy Tuesday or if you have a headache. But the human workforce, they do not operate on deterministic logic.
No, definitely not.
Right. Human adoption relies heavily on habit, on a sense of psychological safety, and on incredibly clear role-based execution.
So we're essentially taking two completely different operational models and just smashing them together.
Pretty much, yeah.
Let's look at the anatomy of this collision then. It makes me think of an analogy.
Oh, lay it on me.
Okay, it's like buying a state-of-the-art high-performance sports car for someone who has only ever driven an automatic sedan.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Right. You hand them the keys to this amazing manual transmission sports car, but you don't actually teach them how to drive a stick shift.
And then you are completely shocked when they stall it right in the middle of a busy intersection.
Exactly. You just left them there.
And that stalling, that's exactly what happens to operational performance.
Right.
When you hand that complex sports car to someone who doesn't know the mechanics, the immediate aftermath is a precipitous drop in performance.
It just nosedives.
It does. Because without structured enablement to help users cross that gap, you get immediate workforce stagnation. People literally do not know what pedal to push next, so they just stall out entirely.
They're terrified of wrecking the car, basically.
Yeah, and out of that terror, or, just desperation to get their job done, you see the proliferation of workarounds.
Right.
People will do anything they can to bypass the rigidity of the new system just to hit their daily targets. And ultimately, the value of the platform itself is completely eroded.
Because they aren't using the tool the way it was designed to be used. But the executives in the boardroom are looking out the window saying, what's the problem? The engine works.